Coming up on Hoge and Jahns, a draft-heavy show. Fran Duffy is going to join us now that the combine is over to talk about all the possibilities at number 25 and beyond. We got a bunch of players to throw his way. Also, some rumors about the Bears going to Spain and Max Crosby. Bears are the betting favorites to land him. We're going to talk about it all. Hoge and Jahns starts right now. What up? Welcome in. Hoge and Jahns back with you. Sponsored by Old National Bank. Every play matters, whether it's on the field or in your financial life. The best teams win by delivering excellence at every level. Old National Bank, where relationships and results matter. Member FDIC. Welcome in. Got a big show for you today, live on YouTube. Good to be back live for everybody after a week in Indianapolis, where that wasn't possible.
Where we made it back alive. I would say.
Well, we were good. It was more so Katie, our producer, that
I'm still recovering. I wasn't planning on showing my face today, but just so everyone knows too, I headed to Miami after the bender at the combine. So I feel like I deserve some credit here.
So which one was the official bender?
What'd you say?
Which one was the official bender?
Honestly, the combine.
Okay, wow. There you go, right there. That was one of the more amazing drop-ins we've ever had on the show.
Patrick Norton is also sick, but the funny thing is he gave up alcohol for Lent and somehow still made it back with the combine flu.
That is impressive.
He didn't drink at all.
No, he did. He did. So he broke his Lenten promise at least 5 or 6 times. If you bought him a drink, that was his out.
Oh, Jesus, don't.
Well, Emma brought D'Amato's cookies every single day, and I gave up sweets for Lent, and I didn't. Just saying, Pat, I didn't indulge.
That's impressive. Wow, I can't believe you just
Norton.
You just outed Pat.
Take that.
Yeah. You just outed Pat to God on live here on Hoge and Jahns. That's kind of messed up, actually.
That's a first.
All right, well, we got a good show for you. Fran Duffy is joining us here momentarily. We're going to go through a bunch of prospects that Jahns and I were intrigued by at the combine. And he's going to fill us in on what he learned about those guys at the combine, where things stand now. I'm thoroughly impressed. Jahns, yesterday I was going through a bunch of his write-ups in the draft guide. They're already updated with all the combine information.
Yeah, his combine thoughts and analysis. I noticed that in a few of the guys that I'm going to mention today.
So, again, great time to sign up to become a diehard and get access to the draft guide. I know we talk about it all the time, but it is worth the price of admission alone. Plus, also gets you access to 20% off all merch, events, free t-shirt when you sign up. And it's just an outstanding deal right now. We also want to give you a heads up that we got something cool going on tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 4th birthday of CHGO. It is the first time that Hoge and Jahns is a part of this, but CHGO's 4th birthday is tomorrow, March 4th, and there is a pop-up store going on at Leaders on Madison. So 1152 West Madison. It's very close to where our studios are in the West Loop. It's a great place. And we got some special collabed merch with Free Agent and CHGO that will be available there. And throughout the day from 12 to 7, you're going to have representatives from CHGO there hanging out as well. I believe we're going to be there at noon.
That's the plan.
It starts. That's the plan for us here at Hoge Jahns. So if you want to stop by, if you're in the city tomorrow, help celebrate CHGO's birthday, say hi to us, we could say hi to you. Looking forward to it, and pick up some cool merch while you're there, because it's a kind of a one-time only situation to come and grab that stuff.
So be there at noon. We may be there for only 30 or 45 minutes. So come on time. We might be a little early as well. We'll be there.
Yeah. So do we have Fran now or not?
He is coming on soon.
Oh,
any second now, hopefully.
All right.
Okay.
So before we get to Fran, then, do you want to talk about the Bears potentially going to Spain? Knock that off our list?
Sure. So I mean, there were rumors about this last week, and I'm not surprised to see the Falcons named one of the teams. I have to say, if you read the fine print on what they put out, they didn't actually say the Falcons were the home team, but I think it's like kind of implied that they are.
I mean, the Falcons are tweeting about it.
Yeah.
I don't know why would you like announce like their away team, even though it doesn't really matter because you're both on the road in a foreign country.
Yeah. Well, because it counts as a home game for one of the two teams. And they both have the extra game next year because they're both NFC teams. So, but anyway, I think it's assumed that the Falcons are one of the home teams, which would mean that the Bears could be one of the opponents because they play in Atlanta right now, or at least scheduled to play in Atlanta next season. Also notable, so are the Chiefs. The Chiefs are also on the Falcons' home schedule. Why that matters is because the Falcons and the Bears and the Chiefs are both two of the three marketing teams in Spain, the Dolphins being the other one. The Dolphins played in Spain last year. So it would make sense, as they've been trying to do this with these marketing rights, to put one of the two teams that have the marketing rights in the game. Even the Falcons are technically the home team. Also notable, the Chiefs went to Brazil last year. Now, there are 9 international games this year. The Jaguars are playing in 2 of them. The 49ers are actually playing in 2 of them. But the point is, at this point with the amount of international games, Johns, there's a good chance like every other year you're going to be going to one of these games. So I don't know if you do the math. The Chiefs played in one last year. The Bears did not. There's a lot of logic here that points to the Bears being the team. I will say this, though. We've been in this position before. Like, it was rumored the Bears were going to go to Germany. I don't know if you remember that a couple years ago. It didn't happen. And part of the reason for that is the math in doing the scheduling is really, really hard. I mean, there are so many algorithms, so many different mock schedules they go through, and they may want the Bears to go there, and they might do the schedule and just realize that it's not possible. They can't pull it off between, whatever the other primetime games the Bears have, when their bye week lands, all of those things. It is, so I would say that there's a decent chance the Bears could end up in this game in Madrid against the Falcons. It would make a lot of sense, but it also wouldn't surprise me, Johns, if at the end of the day, it just doesn't happen because of scheduling.
Do the Falcons have a say in who their opponent is? Because I would imagine they wouldn't want the Bears and all their fans to fill up the stadium.
Great, but you know who does?
The NFL. That's what I mean.
The NFL in Spain.
NFL even care?
And the feedback I got on the game last year in Spain wasn't that it was was bad, but it just didn't have the buzz. I think there was a little bit more of a hesitation from the locals that was more like, well, what exactly is this? Because they had never hosted a game before. That's understandable. Like, I'm sure the same thing could happen in Paris this year as they have the first game. As the Saints are going to Paris. They've built this up in London and other places throughout the years. So that's what they're trying to do in Spain right now. At one point, I had heard that it wasn't a slam dunk they were even going to have a game in Spain. Now they've announced that they are, and the Falcons are one of those teams. But my initial reaction to the idea that, oh, no, the Falcons don't want the Bears and all their fans to come there, I would think if I'm the NFL, like, too bad. We're trying to grow the game, and we want a lot of fans to show up, and the Bears are, they have marketing rights there, so it makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears would change that vibe that you just mentioned. They would bring the energy and the excitement that was missing from the previous game.
Right. So we'll continue to follow that. we will the way the release got put out today. It sounds like we won't know for sure until the schedule comes out in May.
There's a funny comment here. Indiana, now Spain from the Dr. Horror Show. That's funny. That's good. Good comment.
Just keep
going further and further and
further away. Yeah. Well, I would love to go to Spain in presumably October. That sounds lovely. I've been to Spain before, but it was Barcelona. I've never been to Madrid.
Sounds lovely, he says.
It does.
I'm into.
All right. Let's bring in another lovely contributor of CHGO and Hoge Jahns. Now that the combine is over, Fran Duffy's put in all of his work, probably rolling his eyes at Katie's post-combine flu. Because nobody worked harder and deeper into the night than Fran Duffy, inputting all of his information into the draft guide for you diehards here on CHGO and Hoge Jahns. And now that it's all over, we wanted to bring in Fran to throw basically like 10 prospects off of you, Fran, just to hear where your thoughts are on these guys now that the combine is over. What's going on?
What's going on, guys? Yeah, it was a really fun week. I got back yesterday. It was like mid-afternoon here in Philly. It was a long week, but it was a really productive one out in Indianapolis.
So quickly, before we start throwing names your way, what was your general takeaway on some players, like not quarterbacks, skipping some of the drills in Indianapolis?
You know, it was a really high, obviously it was a really high rate of guys that chose not to run, not to test. And there's all kind of, I'm actually going to cover this in the newsletter this week, in the All NFL Draft newsletter, which is completely free, by the way. You can go and subscribe. And one of the things that I wanted to cover was that it's wide varying reasons why this could happen, right? I think that one part of it is the college football calendar. Like, people were in my mentions on social media saying like, oh, like, why is Francis Maui-Noah and D'Angelo Pons and all these? We want to be able to see these guys. Well, they played the national title game 41 days ago, right? And so I'm a little bit. I can accept those guys not going through, and even players from like Ohio State that made it to the second round or third round. Like, I get it, and I think that now the door is open for basically if you make the postseason, if you make the college football playoff, you're like, yeah, like I don't need to work out. I'll work out at my pro day, because a lot of these other guys, like they've been working out and training for this since early December. So as more teams, as the playoff expands, the college football calendar is bumping right into the NFL calendar. And so until that gets cleaned up, I think that's going to have an impact. Some of it is the fact that now there's precedent for guys, skipping and kind of going a la carte. I mean, there were like 15 guys, 20 guys total across all positions that did the full workout. It's like nothing. There are 319 players there. So it's going to be an interesting topic of discussion, I think, over the next couple of years.
It is wild, the difference between the guys that either don't make bowl games or do make bowl games and choose not to play in those bowl games versus these really good, talented players that are loaded on these rosters that end up playing deep into January. And next year it goes even deeper into January from what I saw on the calendar. There's like a 2-month difference there between when their seasons are ending. Some are in late November, some are in late January. That is something they're navigating for sure. And Fran, I'm wondering this and we talked about this when we talked to you before the combine, about all these coaches and even GMs in some cases that aren't even attending. We learned that Ben Johnson was barely there, that he came in and out, he did his media, went back and worked, out of Lake Forest for most of the week. We're hearing that some front office people are leaving earlier and earlier too, even if they are coming. My question is, I don't know that the combine's necessarily in trouble, but I do wonder, like 10 years from now, what it could look like.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of factors at play there. And when it comes down to like team by team, those formal interviews where, teams are meeting with these prospects at night, so in the afternoon. And I think a big part of that is that all 32 teams have different ways that they go about it. Some teams where it's like, it's led by our director of college scouting. We might have the area scout and a couple people in there. Others, it's like, we want as many people in there as possible. Like we want as many eyeballs and sets of ears on this interview as we can. Almost every team is recording them so everybody can watch them back later. Some teams, like I know, for a fact, like some teams in the past, it's like, We just have a psychologist in there. One person, our team psychologist in there, and that's it. And so, like if you're the Bears, if you're Ben Johnson, it's like, all right, well, if the team, I'm not saying that this is the way the Bears do it, but like if just the team psychologist is in there, I don't need to be in Indianapolis longer than I need to be. I can watch the drills from home and I can get work done from the facility. So every team is going to go about it a little bit differently. And because you'll hear some GMs say like, yeah, I get a lot of value of being able to talk to these guys. So it's every team is going to handle that a little differently.
All right. So how we're going to handle this segment with you, Fran, is we have 10 names and we're just going to throw them at you. We gave you a little preview before, but Hoge's going to go first because I feel like we just got to get this position out of the way, but I think it affects how things start for the Bears in number 25 in the draft.
Yeah, this might seem like a curveball at first to people watching, but there's a reason for this. And I want to ask you first about Alabama quarterback, I said, Ty Simpson, not because the Bears would be drafting him, but because if there is a guy that sneaks into the first round outside of Fernando Mendoza, it seems like Ty Simpson has the best chance. And I'm just curious what you think about that. And just to help set this up a little bit, I know you know all this just for everybody watching. Like sometimes you see if someone is going to go get a quarterback late in the first round, sometimes you see teams trade up into the first round to grab those guys because that gives them the fifth-year option availability at the end of the rookie contract. So there's a number of things like does Ty Simpson end up going pick before the Bears, which pushes a guy back to them, or could they potentially be a team that says, hey, there's not a lot of value here. Some team wants to come up for a quarterback. We'll move back to the second round and acquire more picks. I just think that that's something Bears fans should be thinking about here and keeping an eye on Ty Simpson throughout the draft process and on the first night of the draft.
Yeah, I would say that and look, when I come back from the combine, right, and you have all these conversations with people all across the league, and you talk with scouts, you talk with coaches, and a lot of it, you're catching up with them for the first time in a while, right? It's like, oh, like, how you doing? How's your family? You talk about the season, that kind of thing. And then it's usually like, I always find it interesting, the thing that's like right on the tip of everyone's tongue, right? Like last year, it was like, oh, like, I don't know if Shador is going to go high. Right. Like that was like the big thing, like leaving Indianapolis, like, oh, like, I don't know. This year it was about the nature of the class and it was about the lack of workout participation. It was like a lot of like process stuff and just kind of big picture. So I've had conversations about like individual players and a lot of, oh, how'd this guy interview? What do you think about this guy? Medically, well, obviously we'll find out in a few weeks, that kind of deal. Ty Simpson did come up a few times and it does generally feel that he's going to go in the first round. Now, to your point, I'm glad you framed it that way because that's exactly how I was going to frame it. Does he go in the first half of the first round? And now he's, the benefit there is that he's bumping a player down to the Bears. Or is it more in like the Jackson Dart area where it's the latter stage of the first round and then a team is going to try and move up? Or maybe the Bears are in the business of trying to move back in that situation. And so my guess is that he is going to go, I would say I don't want to say significantly before the Bears, but outside of the area where the Bears could be in trade talks. Now they're going to, Ryan Poles is going to have those conversations. I would say late March is when it that started, that kind of thing. The seeds of those conversations begin going into late April. They heat up as you get a little closer to the draft. You do that final check-in. But my gut says that Simpson is going to go before the Bears select.
All right. So the number 25 pick comes up and I want to ask you about a safety who ran faster than, a lot of players there. Oregon safety, Dylan Thieneman. Did I say that right? I have to get used to pronouncing new names. So Thieneman, 4.3 something 40, played at Purdue before going to Oregon. Is it too early to consider him or other safeties at number 25?
No, I don't think it's too early. I think that when you're looking at Thieneman, a lot of it will have to do with scheme fit. That is always the case when you're talking about safeties, just because the usage varies from scheme to scheme, and honestly, that's going to determine how the pecking order looks for all of these positions. I would say for a Dennis Allen scheme, you're looking at Thieneman as and I think we had this conversation out in Indianapolis. It was could he be C.J. Gardner-Johnson for them? I personally don't necessarily view Thieneman as every down nickel corner come down. I know there's been comparisons to Cooper DeJean. I don't think he's that level of cover safety where he's going to consistently play in the slot over and over. Now, if he gets matched up against safety, he's playing to the boundary in a split safety scheme and a team moves the receiver inside and he runs a vertical route and he gets matched one-on-one. Yeah, that might happen 10 times a game, 8 times a game, something like that. He can hold up just fine in that. I just don't want him doing it over the course of 67 snaps, right? And so I think with Thieneman in a Dennis Allen system, he is probably more of like your top down, like play in the deep part of the field, kind of like how they utilized Marcus Williams when he was down in New Orleans. Like I think he would be that deep player for them. And obviously we know, like with that safety, the state of the safety room right now, yeah, like he would be a fit. Now, I would imagine that they're going to have an answer at safety before they get there to late April. And so I think how they address the position in free agency could determine a lot of that. But I do think that Thieneman would be a fit. I think that's probably the range we're talking about with him. He is extremely clean. The medical is clean. The character is outstanding. The football intelligence is phenomenal. The tape, the production, the athletic, like check, like a lot of good check. You're checking a ton of boxes there. And typically those guys, they typically go a little bit earlier than where you would imagine. So I do think that he's going to end up in the top 25 in this draft at the end of the day.
And if people want to hear more from Dylan, we actually had a chance to talk to him last week at the Combine. He sat down with Mark Carman and Greg Braggs on our CHGO set. So that interview is up on the CHGO YouTube channel. I'm going to switch to offense here now and talk about the other Notre Dame running back, Jadarian Price, who, if you watch Notre Dame football this year, had certainly plenty of his own impressive moments. Not going to go as high as Jeremiah Love, obviously. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though, Frank. He did work. Both of those guys worked out. Did they do everything or just quite a bit in Indy?
So neither of them did the shuttles, but
Okay.
I don't think Love did the jumps either. I think Love just ran the 40. Price did the 40 and the jumps. Both guys did a full position workout and did wide receiver drills after, like did additional wide receiver work, like kind of moving around the formation, that kind of thing. I think it was 4 guys did that portion of the workout.
Yeah, I remember I had the coverage on Saturday, and they were giving those guys props, as a lot of people weren't doing, a lot of the prospects weren't doing much. Both of those running backs were doing a lot. Just where's your thoughts on Jadarian Price, where you think he can land, and if he's a fit for the Bears?
Yeah, I think that for me, he is like you kind of pigeonhole him into like the Jahmyr Gibbs type of role for Ben Johnson. He's a movable guy. He showed some flexibility at Notre Dame, certainly to be a quality, like change of pace type of weapon. I like the abilities in space. I don't love him as much like between the tackles, but to me, like he's my RB2, and I feel pretty good about that at this stage of the process in terms of projecting him forward into the league. My comparison right now is Felix Jones, who ended up being a first-round pick. And one of the reasons why I like the comp so much, I think Jones was probably a touch more like dynamic and explosive. But Jones played at Arkansas with the guy that was the number 1 back in that class, and Darren McFadden. Both guys ended up being first-round picks. I don't think Price is going to crack the first round, but I do think that he's got that ability to be like a really strong Robin to someone else's Batman, right? So I think if you put him into the backfield, you pair him with, kind of like a banger between the tackles, I think that fits really, really well for him. And certainly in Chicago, I think Ben Johnson would find a lot of ways to be able to utilize a guy with his talent.
So the Bears left tackle situation it's interesting because you have Theo Benedict, you have Karan Amagaji, a 3rd-round pick from a couple years ago. I'm assuming they're going to add a veteran free agent before the draft comes up. We're thinking it could be Braxton Jones. So some of that may rule out taking a tackle at 25, but Caleb Lomu, they say that right?
Lomu, yeah.
Lomu from Utah.
Yeah.
He's got the right size. He's got the right arm length. He's a young player. Is he, like, where does he rate amongst your tackles? And then do you think he'd be available for the Bears to consider in round 2?
Yeah, to me, I don't think he'll be there for them in round 2. I think if you're going to take him, you're probably going to have to take him in round 1. And honestly, it's not a given that he's going to be there just because of what the upside is with Lomu. I know that he is very high for some people. He's right around like my top 7, 6, 7, 8 tackle range right now. And I think when you're looking at Lomu, he's in that bucket of high-end athletic traits. Needs to get a little bit stronger. You need some more physical development there. He came into college at like 250 pounds and needed to put on a lot of, so he redshirted his first year and then played the last 2. still had some issues with power in that Utah offense. So, if guys were able to get into his chest, drive him back into the lap of the quarterback, I do think that could be an issue for him early on in the NFL. We've seen plenty of guys come in and put on that weight and develop and get a lot better. I will say this, watching the position workouts, being out there at Lucas Oil and going through and you're watching, it can get a little repetitive when you're watching, especially like that. There was that first group of offensive linemen. It was like, all right, like this is a solid group. That second group, it was like, all right, like Lomu goes out there and he was relatively early because he was towards the latter stage of the alphabet in that second group. He went out and I was like, whoa, like his feet are to me are different level compared to a lot of these guys. So he's got explosive traits. He's got really light feet. The one knock on him, I would say, outside of the play strength, would be that he is a left tackle only perceived. That's why. Spencer Fano is going to be a top 10, top 12 pick in this draft. He was the left tackle as a freshman. They bumped him over to right tackle to make way for Lomu because the coaches thought, hey, he's left-handed and can only play left tackle. So that's why they moved Fano over. So that would be the knock, I think, as well on Lomu. Is he a left tackle only? That could hurt the projection. If he is going to be viewed as a starter, then he's got to play left tackle.
How about Monroe Freeling from Georgia?
Yeah, Freeling tested phenomenally, which was expected. You're talking a guy 6'7", 34.5-inch arms, looks the part, and the testing was phenomenal. To me, his best football was the back end of this year. It was only his only year as a starter for the Bulldogs. I will say this, and this does not mean that he's a bad prospect or he's dropping down my board or anything like that, but I think it does kind of encapsulate the prospect of Monroe Freeling. His position workout, I just said Lomu looked outstanding. Fano was phenomenal. Like a bunch of these guys looked really, really good in the positional workout. I would say Freeling had a messy workout. There was one drill where he got sent back in line because he didn't do it right. He slipped and fell once. He stumbled a couple of other times. There was a non-finish through a cone relatively early in the workout. So it's not like, oh man, he looks terrible. I don't know. It was just a messy workout, which happens. Like that's fine. But I do think it kind of again encapsulates how young this player is and maybe the lack of refinement there. But Monroe Freeling, he's not going to be there for the Bears. I don't think, because he's being talked about in Eagles land as well, with the Eagles picking at 23. And I'm like, yeah, I think that ship has probably sailed. Typically a tackle with those traits, and for all intents and purposes, seems like a good kid. Everyone I've talked to, those guys typically tend to go earlier than expected.
That's why I wanted to ask him about him, because I'm like, he's one of those guys that I feel like if he did fall to 25, even though all this talk about the Bears and defense and their needs there, just I feel like it would be very tempting for Ben Johnson to want to settle, to not to settle, but to get that left tackle if he fell that far. All right, hold tight, Fran. We're going to take a quick time out here. When we come back, we're going to throw 5 more prospects your way, and get your thoughts on all these guys post combine. But first, hey, what if you could have reliable and intelligent Wi-Fi? And what if you could keep it at the same price for 5 whole years? That's the Xfinity 5-year price guarantee. Imagine Wi-Fi that makes everything in your home work together, finds and fixes problems before you even notice them, like super intelligent Wi-Fi with the 6th Sense. And it lets you stream the game even when your whole family is online. All of your devices working in perfect harmony for 5 whole years. And the best part is there are no annual contracts, no hidden fees, and Xfinity's best equipment is included. Take it from us here at Hoge Jahns. A lot can change in 5 years. Championships are won, records are broken, dreams grow bigger, but your Wi-Fi, it should always stay reliable, and the price should stay put. So lock in your price and unlock the possibilities with Xfinity. Learn more at xfinity.com. Xfinity. Imagine that. Select plans only. Restrictions apply.
Adam, I was driving down the Kennedy to the office yesterday, and I couldn't help but see that big old National Bank sign right off the Kennedy. It had a reference to the Dr. Seuss. I'm looking forward to the Bears references coming pretty
back
soon. Yeah, soon. More Chicago sports references. At Old National Bank, we believe every play matters, from everyday checking to long-term planning and commercial banking. Our team is here to build momentum and help you move the ball forward. It all starts with a plan tailored for you by professionals you can trust, from simple tasks to bigger financial moments. You can count on us at Old National Bank to coordinate your needs with steady, knowledgeable guidance that brings you clarity and confidence to each step. It's a partnership designed to help you feel supported, not just today, but well into the future. So whether you're celebrating a win, rebuilding after a tough loss, or gearing up for whatever comes next, we've got your back with tools, insights, and an expert crew that's always in your corner. Old National Bank, member FDIC, where relationships and results matter.
All right. Back here with Fran, and we're going through a bunch of prospects that could be fits for the Bears post-combine. And once again, I'll remind you, if you want all of this information at your fingertips at all times, you need to become a diehard. This is just permanently up on my second monitor, basically during draft season. It is a live, living and breathing document, as Fran likes to say. And I think that's a perfect way to put it, because even all his combine info, a lot of these guys is already in here and ready to go. As he updates his own notes and info, you're seeing it in real time. It is Fran Duffy's draft guide available to diehards. So scan that QR code, sign up right now. All right, I'm going to throw a guy. Johns, if I could steal a guy off your list, because I wanted to ask about him too. I mean, would you like to say it out loud?
No, go ahead.
Okay. But Dennis Sutton from Penn State is very interesting to me, because he just seems to fit the Dennis Allen mold of size and length. And then he went out there and had a pretty good combine, it seemed like. So I wonder, from what you've watched, how much that all matches what you've seen on tape.
I was surprised by some of the times that he put up, honestly, because when I think of like athleticism, especially like the fluidity, his 3-cone drill was really, really impressive. Some of the numbers we saw from Dennis Sutton were kind of caught me off guard a little bit in that first night. And obviously that was overshadowed by some of the things we saw from Sonny Styles a little bit later. But I think when you're looking at Dennis Sutton, this is a player that wins with physicality. He wins with length and power. And I think of like the pocket pushers that Dennis Allen has utilized when he was down in New Orleans and at other stops. Yeah, he definitely fits the mold. And so I do think that this is a day 2 player with intangibles. Talking with people inside that program that know Dennis Sutton well, he is one of those guys where holds himself to the highest standard, right? And is a like self-motivated, I want to be the best player that I can be, like gym rat, like always in the weight room, always in the film room. Like he is a guy that has all those intangibles that you're looking for, but was not like, again, like off film, not a guy where I'd say like, oh yeah, like he's a plus athlete. So that's why I always kind of balked a little bit at him. There was round 1 buzz, back in like the spring and summer. I was like, yeah, like I don't know if I'm quite there, but you get me into day 2, now we're cooking. And again, those athletic tests, it's interesting. I was talking about this with somebody actually this morning. To me, like the athletic testing, right? Obviously, it's a measure of movement. It's a measure of a guy's athleticism. But to me, it also can be a positive marker for a guy's work ethic and like the time that he puts into it, because we know how much of these drills is like, it's like technical proficiency, like almost like cheating the drill, right? And so the guys that outperform some of those numbers based off what you see on tape, it's like, man, like he just knew, like he nailed the execution of this drill. And from what I know of Dennis Sutton, he's like, that's a guy that's going to put everything into everything. And so I was, in a way, not surprised to see that he was able to get that time back on, what was that, Thursday night.
So one quick follow-up, since this is a guy on my list, Hoge.
Yep.
Right.
I'm going to explain why I stole him in a second. But I'll let you go. I'll let you go.
Anyway, is he a player that you think maybe after the combine, because of the athletic performance, that the Bears would have to consider maybe moving up for in the second round? Like, does he last into the 50s where the Bears are?
Yeah, I think that's one of those things where, and Ryan Poles talks about this often, like the modeling that they do in terms of trying to like the player projections, and you're leaning on your pro scouting staff in terms of like team needs and fits and things like that. Trying to read the board, read the room in front of you, and you look at the teams that are ahead of you. If you're Chicago, it's like, all right, where are the different pitfalls here if we want to try and move up for this player? Then you're comparing Dennis Sutton to, Gabe Akis from Illinois and Derek Moore from Michigan. And you start going through the other guys that are kind of in that bucket and say, all right, how much are we missing out? What's the gap between Dennis Sutton and some of these other guys? Would we rather spend 2 picks to get Dennis Sutton, or would you rather have Gabe Akis and player X, right? And so that's the calculus that every team is doing. But certainly if you're looking at Dennis Sutton and trying to project him to Chicago to falling in round 2 or round 3, whatever it is, I think those are the conversations you're trying to have. And you're always leaning on, honestly, you're pulling every lever you can to try and get as close as you can to those answers by the time we get to late April.
So here's the reason. 3 blocked punts last year, Johnsy.
I knew it was
those long levers getting through and getting those arms on the football. 3 blocked punts. So name another player who's got 3 blocked punts. I mean, Fran probably can because he knows everything, but that doesn't happen a lot in 1 year from one player.
Usually not for a pass rusher either. Usually that's like a smaller guy. It's usually a DB or fast linebacker that's getting through. And I'll say this too, like we know it was a disappointing year for Penn State. They lose to Northwestern. They fire James Franklin. Everything's set on fire. And then look, lately they almost, they came within inches literally of upsetting Indiana. And Denied Dennis Sutton was an animal in that game. Like just see that to me, like to see when a season goes awry, when a season goes south, who are the guys that still kind of carry the mantle and are the flag carriers for those programs as they get into the late parts of the season? Dennis Sutton was one of those guys.
Okay, so another position that requires probably twofold investment, free agency and the draft, is linebacker for the Bears. And Jacob Rodriguez has this glorious mustache that I think won over the combine. I'm obvious. I can't do that. I can't grow that. But on the field, what type of player would Rodriguez be? Maybe he's an option late day 2, maybe early on day 3.
Trying to remember if Dennis Allen was in New Orleans when they drafted Alex Anzalone, and
he was.
Okay.
Yes.
See, like that to me is an interesting kind of like archetype comparison there, and I have to like run the numbers on that. But just as you were like asking, I'm like, all right, Dennis Allen, like in terms of players that have fit there in the past, I could see definitely his fit. I do think that he is like rock solid day 2. I think that's what we're talking about with Jacob Rodriguez, who was one of the most productive defensive players in all of college football. You talk about like the block punts. And what did he have? He had like 7 forced fumbles this past year, Jacob Rodriguez. And actually has talked about like I met with Peanut Tillman and Tillman was a guy like he's like had conversations with him about the technique, which is funny. But I don't want to say like lukewarm. That's probably too strong of a word, but I was like, I could see like a high-end backup when I did him on film early in the season. And because he had low grades coming into the fall too. Like this was not a guy that we thought was going to be a day 2 pick coming into the season. Had a great year. See him at the Senior Bowl. And after seeing him live and kind of seeing him practice and I'm like, all right, like I'm too low on him. He's a guy I'm going to have to revisit. And then again, just kind of watch him at the combine. Did every drill. He was one of the 20 guys that did every single drill at the combine. It's just like see him go through everything, knowing the character, the background that's been done on him, and everything comes back super positive. He's going to be a day 2 pick. He's going to be one of the first linebackers off the board. I feel really good about Jacob Rodriguez. It's hard not to at this point in the process.
Yeah, he seemed like he definitely helped himself last week in Indy. A guy you got a couple spots lower on the linebacker board. But somebody it definitely caught my eye this season just watching Big Ten football. It's still weird to say Oregon's in the Big Ten, but they are. Bryce Betcher, the linebacker from Oregon. What are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I think that he, to me, is like solid high-end backup as opposed to starter in an ideal sense, but we know how that goes, right? Those guys often maybe they start as backups and then they just like fight tooth and nail and claw their way into the starting lineup. So I wouldn't completely rule that out with Betcher. Really unique background, was a great baseball player, got drafted in like the 13th round, whatever. It's in the draft guide. Got drafted in like the 13th round by the Astros and was set to go. And it was like, I'd really like to see another year of football. So they let him. They were like, yeah, sure, like go play another year of football at Oregon. And then they were like, yeah, I actually want to stay for another year. And so if you talk to anybody in Houston, I would say that the Astros are not a big fan of Bryce Betcher at this point. But I think that when you're looking at him as an off-ball linebacker moving into the NFL, the number one thing that stands out is the toughness and physicality. And I do think that that's a guy that you're probably looking 4th round at the earliest, probably like more like 5th round would be my guess on Bryce Betcher at this stage of the process. But physicality, toughness, he's got a little bit of a playmaking dimension. He's got a great celebration when he makes a big play. He's hitting one out of the park. It's a fun one. But yeah, he's a nice player.
So cornerback is a position that I wanted to bring up in this conversation because I feel like it's a roster concern that isn't discussed enough when it comes to the Bears, and it's a position that Ryan Poles has invested in quite a bit. Like honestly, whether it's re-signing Jalen Johnson, drafting Tyreek Stevenson, I'm looking for taller, more physical cornerbacks. Yep. So Devin Moore stood out to me. I don't know where he ranks amongst other cornerbacks, or how would you view him on day 2? But what do you think?
I'm going to say this. In a class like devoid of guys that I think have blue chip potential, I think Devin Moore has blue chip potential. Like, he has the ability to be like a holy crap kind of starting corner. When you see guys with his size, with his level of movement, it catches your eye. I was expecting him to really impress at the combine. He did not go through positional work. He runs the 40 and he ran 4.5 flat, which on its face at 6'3", just under 200 pounds, like, not a bad number, not to my expectation. I was hoping for more. Based off film, I was like, this guy's going to test really, really well. And especially without the field workout, little disappointing walking away from Indianapolis on Devin Moore. The film is super intriguing. I would say the biggest knock, though, and this is probably why he skipped the Senior Bowl. Maybe it's why he didn't do a full workout in Indianapolis. But he's had health issues throughout the course of his career. Yeah, he has not played a ton of football at Florida. It was a lingering shoulder problem in 2022. He had a separate back injury in 2023, and then he had season-ending shoulder surgery again in 2024. So the shoulder is absolutely something that when he went through that orthopedic exam on, I guess it would have been Friday morning before meeting the media, I'm sure he got, like, it was a full gamut of 6 different doctors pulling, tugging, twisting, turning those shoulders to see what's going on there. I was hoping to see a little bit more. The tape is outstanding, or is really, really intriguing. And Hoge, I know I've said this to you a million times in the last year and change. Like, what do we always hear from Ryan Poles? Is like, grade the flashes. The flashes are phenomenal with Devin Moore. I think that he'd be a great fit in the scheme, and you're probably talking about him on day 2. So I think at the end of the day, that's a really good name, certainly, to know from this Florida defense.
All right, last one for you. I'm going to go a little bit deeper here, but I know Johns and I both believe that the Bears, an underrated need for them is interior depth on their offensive line. And if you kind of follow the breadcrumbs here, they drafted Luke Newman last year. Ryan Bates, I think, we know he's on an expiring contract. I think we think he's probably going to move on. So Luke Newman kind of moves up a bit. I think they view him as somebody who could potentially have starter upside down the road if he continues to develop. Yep. So who takes Luke Newman's place? To me, it would make perfect sense to do what they did last year when they drafted Luke Newman, which was look later in the draft at another interior offensive lineman who can play both center and guard. So this is just me going through your draft guide, trying to find a guy that would make sense. Jagger Burton's name popped out to me from Kentucky as somebody who could make sense in that range. And so I just wanted to ask you about him as a potential day 3 draft pick for the Bears.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best, I would say, like, pure centers in this class. He's had some great reviews from people behind the scenes in terms of, like, the interview process and just kind of projecting him forward, like, because we know how much the mental processing aspect, how important that is to the center spot. That's a guy that there's a lot of faith that he can step in and execute immediately. So he didn't do a full thing of testing out in Indianapolis. So, like, athletic upside was a little bit of a question for me. And now we're not going to find out about that until their pro day here in a couple of weeks. I think that when you're looking at Jagger Burton, it's interesting because I think if you had asked me 6 months ago, I would say, like, oh, this center class isn't great. And so that's probably going to help him because I do think that he's a competent player and he probably goes a little bit earlier than expected. I think that as time has gone on, I kind of warmed up to the center crop a little bit more than I anticipated. And so now I'm like, I wish I had more testing on him. We're trying to break some ties here with some of these guys. But I do think that when you're talking round 4, round 5, that's probably where we're at with Jagger Burton. What is interesting with him, though, is that he is a guy that has kind of bounced back and forth between center and guard. They tried to make him a center early in his career and had major issues with his snaps. So then they kept him in the starting lineup. They moved him to guard. They shuffled around. They found pieces, and then he moved back to center this past year and was fine with it. So I honestly, I think that's admirable. Like, all right, like, he was kind of showed the mental fortitude to, like, go back, get back on the horse and get back to it. But he's an interesting prospect. I think you're talking like middle rounds, and there's a lot to like there.
I think we got a super chat here for Fran Hoge. Do we have it up?
Oh, sure. We can. $2 from Alex, the Bears fan. Age be damned. I like Messidor if he's there.
All right, give me a second. So I want to look at some of the things real quick at Chicago's history in terms of drafting older players under Ryan Poles. And you guys might know this better than me.
Well, one is Velus Jones.
Velus Jones, yep. Actually,
it's the number one reference.
Right. Yeah, so Velus Jones is the number one thing, and that's been the only one on day 1 and day 2. A handful on day 3, but obviously, so Zay Frazier last year, Terrell Smith, Travis Bell. Who else are we looking at here? Dominique Robinson was older. Zach Thomas was older. Doug Kramer was older, like 24 plus. That's just 24 plus. Obviously, with Mesidor, I mean, he turns 25 in like 4 weeks. So we are talking a different level there in terms of player. The big thing, here's my big thing. I think when you're talking about Mesidor, it's twofold. It's the age, but then also the fact that he has had a history of foot injuries. And he's bounced back and forth between defensive end and defensive tackle. He's extremely technically proficient. I love the tape is really good. I really like it. If I was just grading the tape and I said, yep, that's all great, I would say, yeah, he is going to be a guy that it should be a top 25, top 30 pick in this draft. But more context is required. He's played a lot of football. The injuries kind of piled up with his feet. I mentioned he's kind of bounced back and forth. He was mostly an interior guy for them last year in 2024, and he was like, Coach, I really want to play on the edge. Like, what do I need to do? So they gave him this long list of like goals for the offseason. Like, look, if you can do all of this, come back. If you can do all this, we'll play on the edge this year. So he hit all of his offseason goals. They kept him on the edge, and he was phenomenal. I do think there's something to be said for the fact that he's a 24-year-old going up against like 19 and 20-year-olds. Throughout the course of the season, he had his most productive year by far in college. So I am a little bit worried about that. That said, like, the film is the film, and it's really good. If the medical comes back clean, and I get reports that the medical comes back clean, he's going to be higher on my board. That's just a tough profile for me to bet on in the top 25. It's for me personally, I struggle with that as an evaluator.
Fran, this was a huge dump of information on a bunch of guys. We really appreciate it and took up enough of your time. Real quickly, though, tell everybody how they sign up for the newsletter, because everybody, again, the newsletter is free, and so you have no excuse not to read it on Fridays.
Yeah, so I usually it's up on my social page, whether it's Blue Sky, Twitter, all that stuff, like Instagram. You can get access to the All NFL Draft newsletter completely free. I'm going to be working on my post-combine one today. I've got a handful of things going on. I'm getting ready to go on the PHLY Eagles show this afternoon as well. So I'm going to try and see if I can get that done for today and tonight to get out for tomorrow morning. But it's an weekly email from me. Anything that's going on from an NFL draft standpoint, check out the All NFL Draft podcast, and obviously become a diehard so you can get access to the draft guide.
Absolutely. Fran, you're the best. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, Fran.
All right, there is Fran Duffy. Not the last time you're going to hear from him, that's for sure. Less than 2 months to go, though, Johnsy, until the NFL draft. It's sneaking up on us. All right, we're going to close the show with our big takeaway. The big takeaway presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. And today, this is on Max Crosby. There's been some more smoke, and it seems like we'll start with this, Johns. It seems like there's been more momentum, I'd say, in the last 48 hours with the idea of just that Max Crosby will be traded. There seems to be, whether it's Albert Breer, Mike Florio, some of these guys are like, it seems like this is headed towards a trade. So then the question is, what's the price? Where does he end up? Well, I did see this note from Florio, Pro Football Talk, this morning, that right now the Bears are the betting favorites to land Max Crosby. They are plus 200 favorites, according to what Florio wrote here. Staying put with the Raiders is at plus 350. So that's a significant difference just between those two. And then after that, there's a bunch of teams back at plus 700, including the Rams, the Cowboys, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Eagles. Patriots at plus 1,000, Lions, Bucks at plus 1,200. That caught my eye. That not only are the Bears the favorites, but kind of the significant favorites.
Yeah. Well, here's my thought on that. Like, this isn't like betting on a game. It's betting on like a potential trade. Like, does that even really matter? Or is that just something that's fun to bet on?
I think it matters at least a little. I think it's a fair question, because I think it's a combination of, look, first of all, these are always betting markets. So, they're probably getting a lot of money from Bears fans that want it to be true. There's part of there's part of that, but I also think that I don't know how Vegas does it and how they know what they know, but Florio's not writing this up just for clicks. He's there's
come on. Yeah, I don't know about that. We're all in a business here, and he's got like the main.
Well, I said just for clicks.
Site. Okay.
My point is, I think if it didn't matter at all, it wouldn't be. Well, maybe it's still.
I think it matters because everybody's talking about him, and like this buzz is real. It's why Mike Florio, yes, he's writing it because people are talking about him, and they're talking about him because he could potentially be traded because all the breadcrumbs are there. It took a while for them to reveal themselves at the combine, but they're there. So should the Bears do it? I'm torn on that. Like there's got to be a line somewhere just in terms of everything you're giving up to acquire Max Crosby.
Well, my line is 2 first-round picks. Well, let me clarify. I don't go beyond 1 first-round pick. I'm willing to give up other things. I think there could be a win-win in there somewhere if I don't know why the Raiders would take on Tremaine Edmonds, but DJ Moore could make sense to bring in with Fernando Mendoza with DJ Moore's track record of working with young quarterbacks and what he did with Justin Fields and some others. So that feels like that would just be like really, really fortunate though. If that's actually how you could pull that off. Picking at 25 though, I would be willing to part with this year's first round pick and more, because it would obviously take a significant probably a player and some other picks in future years. But I think there's a way to work that out where it doesn't cost you 2 first-round picks. And if it does, if somebody's out there saying they're going to give up 2 first-round picks, then I probably draw the line at that and say no.
Like, I know there's a debate out there about whether or not to go for it while Caleb Williams is on his rookie deal. You got to have that sustainability. That's the buzzword for Ryan Poles, for the future. And I understand all that. But at the end of the day, you're still trying to create the best roster to win a championship. Nothing is promised beyond really this season. So if the best roster construction comes with adding Max Crosby this year and next year, I still think you have to seriously consider it. Yes, you have to draw lines somewhere in the sand just in terms of what you're going to be parting with. But at the same time, I'm stuck on this idea. The Bears are doing this, if they traded for Max Crosby, they're doing this after the fact. When they traded for, let me get this right, when they traded for Khalil Mack, that was a gamble. Matt Nagy's first year, Mitch Trubisky's first year at Nagy. You were betting that you were right on that. You would do this after the fact of seeing Ben Johnson work with Caleb Williams and this team become a playoff contender, playoff winning team, a team that reached the divisional round of the playoffs. So you do that with more confidence. It's a less of a gamble is what I'm saying, as opposed to what the Bears did previously in 2018 with Mac, because you didn't know what Matt Nagy was going to be. You didn't know what Mitch Trubisky was going to be. You have more certainty this year after what happened in 2025 with Ben Johnson paired with Caleb Williams.
Yeah. I see that comment there. How come Khalil Mack didn't cost 2 first-round picks? He did cost 2 first-round picks. The Bears did give up multiple first-round picks for Khalil Mack. I don't think this is that situation. Khalil Mack was coming off his rookie contract. Same thing with Michael Parsons. They were both younger than where Max Crosby is right now. Max Crosby's coming off of back-to-back off seasons with surgeries. I still think he's a phenomenal player. I agree with your point, Johns. I think the gamble from what the quarterback is not the same. I do think, though, there's more gamble in how long and what productivity he's going to be able to give you. And you saw even with Khalil Mack, he peaked in that first season. He was still good after that, don't get me wrong, but his best was right away. Now, if you can get the best of Max Crosby, though, in 2026 with an up-and-coming roster that was just in the divisional round, that could be your Super Bowl ticket. That's on the table. So is that worth the bet? Is that worth the gamble? I think when you look at his contract, it doesn't tie you up for 6 years. It's only a couple years.
It's a huge difference between and again, Khalil Mack, You traded for him. You have to sign him to a massive deal, with also limited you financially going forward.
That's why when you add it all up, I'm in to a point. I'm in for this year's first, a player, and probably more. But I don't want to give up multiple years of first round picks. They're too valuable. They have too much. They hurt you too much on the back end. Not having a first round pick or missing on a first round pick, it costs you. I mean, it costs you big time. You have to hit on those. And with some rare exceptions, like when the Rams, said F them picks and kind of went all in, they've managed to stay competitive, but they did have a pretty big, significant down year and all of that too. So eventually it did cost them. And
they're also
if you want
really, here's my, I've always had a problem with the F the picks Rams thing. They are so good at trading back and accumulating picks. They have some of the largest drafts every single year.
Right.
They're having more swings.
So they might trade their first, but they're still getting a ton of swings. Right.
Anyway, it's less.
And then they hit on Puka Nacua later, right? Like guys like that. And that's a first round talent they got way later in the draft.
So to me, trading for Max Crosby this year is less of a gamble than trading for Khalil Mack in 2018, just because of the certainty again that you have because of Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. And if you're not trying to win now, are you really trying to win at all? Seriously.
Well, that's the fine line. I mean, but win now is different than going all in, and mortgaging your future.
Oh, now it's like semantics. You're not really mortgaging the future if you're only giving up one first round pick.
Well, right. That's what I'm saying. But if it costs more than that, then I think you are, and don't forget, to make this work, they're probably going to have to restructure some contracts. And Ryan talked about the pluses and minuses of doing that too, and kicking the can down the road. I think you could do it to a point, but when you start to do it too much, you give up too many first round picks. You push too much cap space back. Eventually, that does come to haunt you. You got to be very strategic about it. But my point is, I think they can be strategic about it. I think you can fit Max Crosby into this and make it work without mortgaging the future too much, which is one of the reasons why I think the Bears should be and probably are a real player in all this. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying they got to be one of these teams. They're one of the teams a handful of teams, I think it makes a lot of sense to be involved in this. And it seems like there's some smoke that's maybe happens sooner rather than later, which almost surprises me a little bit considering the injury. But again, I made this point yesterday on CHGO. If I'm the Raiders, I do want to get this done before the draft so that I can at least have that pick this year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. End the segment. We're good.
All right. That is the big takeaway. Presented by Xfinity. Imagine that. And that's going to do it for us here on Hoge Jahns today. We'll be back later on in the week. Thursday, we should be live again at 10 a.m. with another live episode. And we'll get into free agency because free agency starts Monday.
That comes first.
And who knows? Maybe we even have a trade in the next 48 hours before our next show.
Well, usually how this works is we're going to log off here in like a minute. And 5 minutes from now, while we're pouring our second coffees of the day, it hits.
Right. Yeah, that's how it goes. We do have CHGO Bears at 1 o'clock if that does happen. And I will tease this. We had a great conversation with Allen Robinson, former Bears wide receiver, last week in Indianapolis. It was like 30 minutes. It's a longer interview. And we are going to bring that to you today on CHGO. So make sure you check out CHGO Bears feed as well. Hit the like and subscribe button on the way out. And go over to CHGO, do the same, rate and review the podcast. Appreciate everybody that helps grow the pod, spreads the word, texts the links out, tweets the links out, whatever you guys like to do. Send it off to a Bears fan. We appreciate it. And don't forget, if you're in the city tomorrow, we are going to be over at Leaders on Madison, 1152 West Madison. Those special collab items, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see them. They're super cool. Those will be available to purchase in person at the Free Agent and CHGO pop-up shop. And it's just a way that we're celebrating the 4th birthday of CHGO, which is tomorrow. I also have a special Die Hard deal for you tomorrow, too, from what I hear. So be on the lookout for that. It is definitely the time with Fran's draft guide to become a diehard if you're not already. Thank you very much. We will talk to you on Thursday.
See ya.
We all silly like the mayor.